Well, hello, my name is Jim Royal. I'm a huge Beatles and Elvis Presley fan and basically classic rock in general, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. At the end of the video, if you could do a thumbs up, that's always most appreciated. Feel free to leave comments. I always do my best to try to respond in a timely manner, and I thank you in advance for watching my video. Today what I wanted to do is I picked up a record here. This is called the Beatles Decca Tapes. This was a release made in Europe. And what this is basically the Beatles on January 1st, 1962 had an audition with a major record label called Decca Records. And it was a record company that's still around today. It was originally founded in, I think, 1929. Well, anyway, they recorded 15 songs, and all 15 of them are on here. Well, it turned out that they were rejected. They failed the audition, and probably good for us, because then 4 or 5 months later, in January of 1962, they had an audition with Parlophone EMI under George Martin, and the rest is history. So I wanted to talk about these. I know when I was growing up in the 80s, these would be available, these recordings, and a lot of times they wouldn't have all of them together. There are actually, from these sessions, there are 3 Lennon-McCartney originals, and then the rest, the other 12, are cover tunes from their stage act. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how this came about and a little bit about the songs. And chances are you might actually have some of these songs already in your collection and don't know it. Alright, so what happened was in 1961, Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, he had a record chain, different stores, and he had allowed him some access to the record labels. So he had some different contacts, and he was able to finally reach out to someone at Decca, which is a very huge company, called Mike Smith, A&R man over there. He convinced them, hey, the Beatles are really good. Why don't you come and check them out for yourself? So he convinced Mike Smith to go to the Cavern Club where the Beatles would often play. This was in December 1961, and hear him for himself. Well, he liked what he heard, and he says, "Okay, great. I'm going to set you up for our London office for an audition, an official audition." That was January 1st, 1962. By all accounts, very cold, very snowy day. The Beatles got there, they had their old battered equipment, and Decca said, no, we don't want you using that here in the studio. They had them use other equipment. They only allowed them 1 take, and there were no overdubs. So this clocks in at about 35 minutes. And it's a very interesting recording, historical by all means. One reason it's also historical, which I think is cool, is you have John Lennon, you have Paul McCartney, you have George Harrison, and you have Pete Best. That's right, Pete Best. Let me show it to you a little bit clearer here. So this is a picture disc that I picked up. There's really, I could take it out, but there's really nothing else to see other than what's right there. But it's pretty cool. And Pete Best was their drummer for 2 years, from August 1960 until August of 1962 when he was sacked for Ringo. And I guess one of the things that, I would say, and I know other people would say, is, well, how good was Pete Best? Okay, one of the reasons they say they got rid of him because they didn't think he was a good drummer. All right, even though he was with them for 2 years. You know what? Listening to these tapes, I don't think that he was a bad drummer. I think he was a different drummer. I think he had a different style than, for example, what Ringo had. Ringo was, very smooth and steady. This guy is a little flashy at times, and I don't know necessarily, I don't think that was the winning formula for the Beatles. Now there are some songs on here that call for a little flash, I think, and I'll highlight them. But I think it was kind of like sometimes he's busy in the background doing the drums, doing this different stuff, and it's like, what are you doing? And but I will say he did keep the beat, and I thought he did a good job. So I don't know. George Martin, they would later, after they failed this audition, Brian would continue to shop, and he finally met George Martin at Parlophone EMI, and they were given an audition there in June of 1962, and the rest is history. So let me talk to you about this, but before I start, if you have Anthology 1 from the Beatles, this came out in 1995, then you have 1/3 of these recordings. You have 5 of the recordings. You have a song called, let's see here, you have Searchin', you have Three Cool Cats, The Chic of Araby, Like Dreamers Do, and Hello Little Girl. Okay? So, let me talk about these songs a little bit for you. But what happened was, Decca was looking for a new act like the Beatles. And they, not only were they looking at them, but they were looking at a group called Brian Poole and the Tremeloes. They also had an audition at that time. And the head of pop for A&R at Decca was a man named Dick Rowe. And he will infamously be known for the man who turned down the Beatles. That's right. He went with this other group. This other group, by the way, it took them, their first 4 singles were flops before they had any hits. Modest, very modest success. And they later would cover Good Day Sunshine, a Beatles song from Revolver. So, from what I have read, he learned from his mistakes, and he was able to sign the Rolling Stones. But he didn't get the Beatles. And in fact, the comment is that these guitar groups that the Beatles were on their way out at that time. So I thought that was funny. Okay, so let's talk about the songs on here. There are 3 Lennon-McCartney originals. The first one I'm going to talk about here is Like Dreamers Do. This is a song that Paul sings lead. It's from 1959. I thought it was a good tune. You know, I wouldn't say it's a sensational Lennon-McCartney song. I think I can realize maybe why they gave it to someone else to record officially later on. But it was good. I'd have to say it was good. Okay, so this was a song that Decca later released on their label by the Applejacks. And it was a number 20 hit in June of 1964. Okay? Alright, the next song is a song called Money. John sings lead on this. They would officially record, I think this was recorded for With the Beatles on EMI later. But they did this at the audition here. This is a song from 1959, by Barrett Strong. This was the first Motown hit. Berry Gordy and Janie Bradford wrote this song. Man, I love it. You know, John does a really good job with it. It's high energy, just like, you know, the version that we're familiar with. Beatles are on top here. They're doing a good job. All right, next song is called Till There Was You. Sounds familiar? Yeah. Well, this is a song that Paul does. It was originally from 1957 from The Music Man. Meredith Willson wrote this song, and this was also, I think this was on With the Beatles as well, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, great tune. Sounds the arrangement is very similar, identical to the one that they would release on Parlophone EMI later on. All right. Next song is called The Chic of Araby, and this one you have George Harrison singing lead. This was a song originally written in 1921. It was inspired by the film The Chic, a big silent film at that time. Rudolph Valentino was a huge actor, and it was basically written after the success based on that movie. By Harry Smith and Francis Wheeler, the music by Ted Schneider. And gotta tell you, a lot of these songs that George sings, this one and another one which is my favorite, Three Cool Cats, he's really doing a great job. And I gotta say, you know, just his character, his singing is good. He sings a few times on here. His guitar work is good. You know, these are one takes, and I'm not really hearing, you know, errors. I'm not hearing flubs and stuff. Just a really good job on that. All right, so the next song is, I got to get my thing going here. To Know Her Is to Love Her, okay? John sings lead on this. This was a song that was a #1 Billboard song in 1958 by the Teddy Bears. This was written by Phil Spector, and he was in that group too. Nice tune. I've always liked this one too. This was one that I had heard, and I really liked that. Actually, I think, okay, yeah, I think Phil was also in the band. He did write it though. And this was a #1 hit at the time, so it was really good. John does a good job on this, and the band is, you know, really tight behind him. Really cool. All right, after that is a song called Take Good Care of My Baby. You have George on lead vocal on here, and this is a song by Carole King and Jerry Goffin. This was a song from 1961. Bobby V made it popular. A lot of us, you know, this is a song a lot of people have covered. The Beatles also did it too. Okay, next song is called Memphis, Tennessee, and this is a Chuck Berry tune that John sings lead on. It's from 1959, and this is a B-side. And this is what I like about the Beatles. You know, a lot of these songs that I'm mentioning here, that this was their normal live staple for their live act. They would mix in a few originals, but they would take songs that were B-sides, like this, and sometimes the A-sides, but they would B-sides that more obscure, and they would have their own arrangement to them. And then, you know, people would be like, hey, this is, I'm not familiar with this song. You know, even though it was by a major artist, but it was a B-side. So really, it's a good tune. You know, it's good. I like it. Memphis, Tennessee. Nice Chuck Berry song. Elvis would also cover it too. Many artists would. I think Johnny Rivers did. Many artists. Okay, Sure to Fall is the next song. This is Paul singing lead. This is a Sure to Fall in Love with You, a Carl Perkins song. Carl Perkins, like Elvis, started out on Sun Records. This was recorded in 1955 and then later released in 1957. Beatles were big fans of Carl Perkins and covered a lot of their songs, a lot of his songs like Matchbox, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, among others, and this is one of those. Really cool. Later, Ringo Starr would cover this song. Paul would produce it in 1981, Stop and Smell the Roses. Paul would play on it, and he had Linda McCartney on there, and some members of Wings also play on it. Alright, so the next song is called Hello Little Girl. Hello Little Girl is a song that John wrote as early as 1957, Lennon McCartney original. I like the tune. I've always liked it. It's a simple song. It's not spectacular by any means, okay, but it's a nice John Lennon song. You know, you listen to things and you're like, yeah, I know John Lennon wrote that. And he wrote this one. It was a #9 hit for the UK group, The Foremost, in August of 1963, and you had George Martin producing it later on when they did it. So I think the story was he wrote it and then he finished it up by the time this came, and then, you know, but he had it, you know, laying around for a while. But they would often do it. The next song is my favorite song in the album. It's called Three Cool Cats. George sings lead on it. I absolutely love it. It's a 1958 song. Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, songwriters. A lot of Elvis Presley songs. They would write songs for Elvis, among many other artists. This was a Coasters B-side to the song Charlie Brown, and it's from 1958. Okay, so we've got a few more songs here. Crying, Waiting, Hoping is the next song. This is from 1959, and this is a Buddy Holly song, and it's the B-side to the song Peggy Sue Got Married. You have George singing this one. It's good. You know, they would often, the BBC recordings, they would do this one too. Love of the Loved is the next one. This is the third Lennon-McCartney original on here, and this is one that continues, unlike the other two, to remain unreleased by them. This was a song from 1958. Paul sings lead. Very Elvis sounding, Elvis inspired, but sort of Latinish. It was the debut single later for Cilla Black. George Martin produced it. It was a number 35 hit in the UK, September of 1963. All right, the next song is called September in the Rain. This is a song from 1937. Paul sings lead on it. It's an old song that they turned into a rock and roll version here. Harry Warren and Al Dublin wrote it from the film Melody for Two. James Melton introduced it in there. It's good. You know, it's good. I like the fact that they are turning songs that aren't rock and they kind of turn them in, and there's a cool element to that. I like how they did that. Okay, another favorite on here is Bésame Mucho. This Paul sings lead. It's from 1940. A Mexican songwriter named Consuelo Velasquez. This is known, as of 1999 anyway, as the most recorded Mexican song in the world. The English lyrics by Sonny Schuyler. One of the films it was in was Follow the Boys from 1944. Bésame Mucho is a song, if you translate that to English, it means kiss me a lot. I like it. This is another highlight on here, and I like it. And in fact, it's funny because they would later do this in June of '62 when they auditioned for George Martin at Parlophone EMI. This was one of the songs that they did. And actually, you can check this out on Anthology. So, like I said, you know, you have 5 of the songs already on here. So check them out also. And just see what I mean. You listen to that and you get a pretty good idea of what this sounds like. But if you want to own all of these, this is a good way to do it. Okay, the next song is called Searching. This is going to close this particular record. This is a song that Paul sings from 1957. Jerry Lober and Mike Stoller again. It's a Coasters number 3 pop single chart. This was the A side. The B side is a song called Youngblood. If you remember that on your BBC recordings, live at the BBC, the Beatles do Youngblood on there. So that's pretty cool. Pretty nice. So anyway, these recordings, I would say, why I would buy them, if you are a Beatles completist, I would highly recommend this. I think the recording sounds good. They were recorded at a professional studio, okay? The Beatles are very young. They have Pete Best on here, so it's interesting in that sense. And, you know, this is the Beatles sound at that time. If you were to see them in concert, I know we can check out Star Club recordings in Hamburg that were recorded not that well. This is recorded very well, okay? The only thing I will say, at times the Beatles are a little stiff. The Beatles sound very similar in a lot of the material. But overall, if I was to rate this particular album, Beatles, the Decca Tapes, I would give it a 6 out of 10, 10 being the best. So thank you very much for watching my video, and you have a very nice day. All right, take care. Bye.